Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making your way back here. I hope you've all had copious quantities of caffeine before my session. Makes things all the more entertaining. Can you hear me okay? Excellent, which is also basically like a ping or an ICMP type H check. You're actually all listening a little bit at least. A brief introduction and my normal health and safety warning. First things first, I am going to do a session about malicious code. I am going to show you some of the tools the bad guys are using, show you some of the latest malware, some of the bad stuff going on. And you can see I take this health and safety exercise with a bit of flippance, but the point is basically this. Please do not go and download the things that I show you. That might seem like a strange thing to say, but you'd be astonished how many people will go to a security conference, watch a presentation about security, and then promptly go home and in unsafe conditions infect themselves with malicious code. So as I like to say, please practice safe hex. You have to say that very carefully at the beginning of a presentation. It can be a real downer before you get started. Now, an introduction to me, if you haven't come across me before, this basically summarizes my career so far. I am a geek. I spend most of my time playing with malicious code, figuring out what the bad guys are up to. So you can see my true incarnation on the left here. I actually did used to have hair that bad. It was quite staggering. And you can see the various stages throughout my career. But note the repeat of the Mac user as the stereotypes updated. The original true Mac user would wear a mock turtleneck, drink a latte, and wear chinos. Any Mac users here? Yes, yeah, that's interesting. I've got to start to form a female stereotype of the Mac user, actually, so we could talk about that later. But the new version is, of course, donning a bow tie and drinking excessive amounts of coconut water, which is what all Mac users must now do. So I do spend my time, playing with all this fun, bad stuff. And today, I want to kind of cover three major things. Firstly, the concept of one step forward, two steps back, kind of old wounds that we're opening up again by virtue of some of these new devices, some of the lessons we're unlearning in information security. Secondly, I want to take a look at how the bad guys are evolving, the tactics that they're using, and some of the things that we might be able to use back at them with questions on law and ethics and alike. And finally, I do want to look at some of the latest behaviors of malicious code. So I guess it would be remiss of me not to start my presentation by talking about how much things are changing. And I'm not going to do that horrifying pitch of the cloud populated with invisible pink unicorns and all that wonderful stuff you see from marketing presentations. Incidentally, whenever I say the word cloud, you do know that there is a certain mandatory audience reaction, right? No? Okay, so when I say cloud, marketing people expect you to go, ooh, okay? In fact, actually, let's try this. Next time I say cloud, excluding that one, if you could all make a really fake, kind of horrifyingly bad ooh noise together, okay? Would you like a practice? Yeah, okay, no premature oohing. On 3. 1, 2, 3. That was wonderfully fake. Marketing people all over the world are sitting there going like this. Okay, so whenever I say cloud, very good. Most responsive audience yet. Okay, so we've got all these wonderful new devices coming in, iPhones, iPads, Androids, all of which are fantastic. I'm a big fan of all this new technology. But each of them has a completely new security model, a completely new operating system, and different security challenges developing. And I guess one of the most astonishing things to me at the moment is the pace of change of technology and how hard it is for the security community to keep up with all these new innovations. So some things get massively downplayed. For example, HTML5. Now, this is a technology that's in most of your devices you're using right now. It's in your iPad, it's on your computer, it's everywhere. And everyone just assumes it's just a web authoring language. It's something you use to write websites. But it's astonishingly powerful stuff. For example, you know cookies, yeah, that you have in traditional websites today, and they're kind of annoying and they pop up, and you're familiar with some of the regulations that have come out about cookies for privacy purposes. Well, HTML5 actually includes kind of like a SQL database where clients can store, websites, sorry, can store gigabytes of information in the client. Now, no one's really paid attention to that. We're all still obsessed with cookies. So think, I mean, HTML5 has got Uber muffins. Okay, I need a better name probably than Uber muffins, but it's big cookies, okay? I'll have a competition to see if anyone can come up with anything better. Storing astonishing amounts of information, and no one's really noticed. We've got all these new wonderful applications, you know, augmented reality, which sounds far cooler than it actually is, where, you know, we're wandering around, we're able to tag information in the physical world. An astonishingly large number of us are out there publishing information on social media sites and alike, you know, with GPS information embedded into every photograph. And it's a weird state of mind where if I walk up to one of you in the street and say, you know, what's your name and address, you won't tell me, but you'll quite happily publish GPS coordinates to within a few meters of your house online for a complete stranger. It's astonishing if you actually go onto dating sites. Any users of dating sites here? No, sometimes that works. It's great. You get the kind of, not me, I do it for security research. So I am on dating sites for security research, obviously. And it's fascinating how many people will publish this stuff with their GPS coordinates. And I got to tell you, you meet some really damn strange people on dating sites. It's like the place where all the weird people on the internet go that you don't want to meet. And publishing, you know, that information is quite astounding. So it's not just the traditional malicious code issues, viruses, worms, spam that we've got to worry about. There's all kinds of new stuff coming to the fore that the bad guys can use. But we'll come back to that a little later. I guess we've also got to consider the wonders of advanced persistent threats, which is now kind of thrown at anything that moves. It's like, oh, we got hacked. Quick, call it an APT and it'll be fine. APT this and APT that, or as I like to call it, advanced persistent tweed. We've got hacktivists, of course, with a completely different set of motives. And this is really, really fascinating because lots of organizations have built their security model around the idea of dealing with essentially malicious code targeted at Windows. So you'll find these Linux servers sitting under people's desks with incredibly poor protection because they didn't really expect them to get attacked. And hacktivists with their broader regime will start to target some of those unexpected points. But still, for me, the most concerning thing is this trend. And this graph causes me a lot of stress. You see this stress line here? It's pretty horrifying, isn't it? I love the way that some of you nodded, you cynical bastards. So this graph shows the number of individual pieces of malicious code that we see every single day in Sophos labs. Now, you know, you can see it used to be pretty bad, you know, around the 60,000 mark. Today, we see over 200,000 individual new pieces of malicious code every single day in Sophos labs, which is, well, basically a lot, isn't it? I mean, that's a staggeringly large volume. On bad days, you know, we get kind of 250,000, 250,000 new pieces of malicious code every day. Now, there are lots of reasons for this, and of course, you know, some malicious code is more interesting than others. But before we get into the interesting stuff, and I show you all the sexy high-end things, I do just want to make sure that I don't fall into that security vendor trap of only showing you the sexy high-end stuff and making you all think that you're being pursued by the 1%. Because actually, a lot of this stuff still works for this reason. Messages like this. Hi there, I got to show you this picture in attachment. Incidentally, apparently English is not a prerequisite for being a cybercriminal. I can't tell you who gave it to me, sorry, but this chick looks a lot like your ex-GF. GF, I believe, is girlfriend, for those of you that don't use short messaging or alike. But who's that dude? Obviously, you need to open that attachment. It's a foregone conclusion. Or my eminous collection of favorite spam messages of all time. I'm a particular fan of this bottom one here. The bleep in large patch will make your bleep so large you will be able to park a car on it. I mean, that just sounds painful. Why would anyone click on that? No? Or, I mean, this one above is absolutely fantastic. The bleep polishing and detailing newsletter. Okay, well, the original was an expletive beginning with P. You can probably figure out what it was. I don't understand why you would click on that, but you can pretty much put anything in there, and it's hilariously ridiculous, like giraffe polishing and detailing newsletter. Who are the people that click on this stuff? Honestly. You still see people clicking on the, hi, I'm a Nigerian banker, and I've got $63 billion I'd like to give to you because I like your face. And people click on it. So a lot of this stuff still happens due to basic mistakes. But you don't have to be an idiot to get infected with malicious code. Today's attacks are highly automated, highly scalable, and can happen completely in the background, as I'll show you shortly. You've got wonderful testing platforms. There are lots and lots of these out there. These have been in existence for the past few years, but they're getting much more interesting now. Quality assurance in the cloud for malware vendors. Ooh, very good. There's at least 2 of you who aren't bored. That's excellent. You wait till my demos go wrong, because is anyone familiar with my standing distraction technique when demos break? That's right, I sing the Canadian national anthem. I'm not Canadian, it's just an interesting national anthem. And I know at least the first 3 phrases now, so I can get on that. There is about a 1 in 63,002 chance this all goes completely wrong. So, these services enable you to go online, create an account, upload your malware, type in your credit card details. Well, I mean, you steal someone else's credit card details and use those, obviously. And then you can run a check against your malicious code and all these different platforms. And it generates a lovely, sexy graph showing you which vendors detected you and which ones didn't. Some of these now offer continuous protection services for the malware community, where they'll constantly test the malicious code, and the second a vendor detects it, they'll send you a notification so that you can update your malware with a new version to avoid being detected. I mean, what? When did all this stuff happen? It's crazy. Now, I went searching the web and tried to find myself a set of attack tools. And I ended up with quite a big collection, about 30 within the first couple of hours. Now, there are lots of these attack tools around, competing on price and functionality. It's very much an illicit, black economy. I want to show you my favorite still, and then talk about some of the more advanced versions. Now, you can probably see why this particular crime pack is my favorite. That is a staggering investment in graphics, isn't it? It's wonderful. It's, I believe what you say in the technical, it's really badass. They're clearly very angry with their mums. They've got real issues they need to resolve. But the point is, a very nice piece of software that you can purchase to help you distribute malicious code. Now, these products are available as software for a few $1,000s, or if you're not sure that you want to be a full-time cyber criminal yet, maybe you're kind of new to the gig, you can actually rent it as a cloud service. And they only have a month tie-in contract, so you can kind of dip your toe into cybercrime and see if you like stealing people's information. And if you do, you can continue doing it. So it's very nice of them to offer an evaluation of becoming a cybercriminal. It comes with video installation guides, documentation, but my personal favorite, email technical support. You could actually email these guys and say, hey, yeah, no, I'm struggling to set up my server for stealing people's money. Please help me. And they'll help you configure the thing and set it up. It's a commercial product, which is insane. So let me show you how this setup works, and we'll switch over to a live version. So here you can see the installation wizard, where we've got the install password. You've got to put a serial number in there to activate it. Took me a little while to crack this one. but I guess it's one of the first occasions where software piracy is actually a good thing. And you configure all this stuff, and it sets up the databases for you to manage everything beautifully. So let's switch over to the live version of the Crime Pack. Okay, so here is my little Windows 7 system. You may notice, Mac users in the audience, I've upgraded to a funky new Mac. That's because I was previously running on a MacBook Air, and I used to have to do my demonstrations on Windows XP. Not because the demonstrations wouldn't work on Windows 7, but because if you run 3 virtual machines, including Windows 7 on a MacBook Air, it increases to the temperature of the sun. And like smoke comes out and keys start to fly off. It's quite dramatic. So now I've got this nice new funky system, which is fantastic. Now, let me open up Google Chrome here. And there we go. Oh, we'll play with that later. And we'll open up our control. Just authenticate. There we go. Nice login screen. By the way, this has fantastic browser support. It even works with IE6, which is great for things like the Ministry of Defense. Now, we can log in with admin and a very, very typical secure password. Of course, in a real production network, it would be password 1 or password 2. For real security, if it's a domain administrator account, password 2012 is obviously much more secure. And I did joke once with an audience, does anyone have the password 2012? And this guy just went completely ashen and left the room. I accidentally destroyed his life in one of my presentations, I think. So please don't admit to your password. So we'll log in. And here we can see what I think is the best demonstration of this concept of organized cybercrime. Because we hear it all the time, but we don't often get to the specifics of what that actually means. This is a business reporting dashboard for cybercriminals that measures how effectively they're distributing their malicious code. It measures the vulnerabilities that they're using. It measures the operating systems, the browser statistics, so they can see how far and wide their campaign is running. Now, it's very easy to configure this software. We've got our little settings button here, where you can configure everything, like the different versions that you'll use, or my particular favorite, this feature here. Are you familiar with the concept of a blacklist? Yeah? So we have blacklists in our organizations, like if you try and go to www.baconwrappedbritneyspears.com. God, I hope that's a real domain name. Actually, it probably is malware. Don't go there, just in case. Anything I mention in this presentation like that, do not visit it until you've had enough pints of beer to prepare you for the potential side effects. So, if you try and access one of those web pages, your firewall or your web security appliance will block it. Well, the bad guys have blacklisting for us. So if we, a forensics person or a labs like Sophos Labs, try to go to one of these pages to get the malware, they redirect us to unoffensive web pages. So they built in defensive mechanisms to make it hard to collect their malware. And they're sharing these using cloud services between all the different instances, which is quite impressive community effort. Generating a new bit of malware is very, very simple. We just click iframe, and it generates a new bit of infection code every time we click. And you can see we get some nicely globfuscated JavaScript. And then you can perform on a website some SQL injection, or as I've renamed it, Sony injection. One laugh. Ah, there we go. Thank you, dear sympathetic listener. You can inject this into a website, and of course, it runs in the background, drops you to this Crime Pack page, and infects you with malicious code, as we'll do shortly. Now, what's interesting is most of this malicious code across these crime packs today is distributed from good web pages, not from kind of porn sites and adult sites, etc. To tell you how advanced this has become, we switch back to the dashboard. I have seen a lot of these different versions of dashboards, different levels of feature, some supporting mobiles, different operating systems. And I saw one recently, you'll love this, which had a CRM in it, a customer relationship management tool. So it could manage the life cycle experience from infection to transaction with its customers. And so I'm looking at this thing, and you can imagine the words that are coming out of my mouth as I'm kind of looking at the screen. But there's this amazing column, and the column just says exploitability. And I'm thinking that must be about the computer. No, it's about the user. They're profiling how gullible the user was. And then they were calling them up on the phone using an outsourced team in India and trying to sell them fake platinum support services for the fake antivirus they'd installed on their computer. I mean, how rude is that? I mean, exploiting someone once is one thing, but then exploiting them over the telephone, I mean, that's just adding insult to injury, isn't it? Astonishingly coordinated stuff. Now, as I say, there are lots and lots of different versions of this available, but lots of them today conform to this kind of pattern. We go from a legitimate web server up at the top with some inserted malicious code to redirect through a series of traffic directing servers to redirect to different locations and make it harder to track, until eventually we get to that nasty script which drops us one of these exploits. Really interesting. Of course, last year we saw a mass of use of PDF. That was the really big one that was being used for distribution. Now, progressively, Adobe's made lots of changes. They've introduced updating and sandboxing, and we've seen a bit of a drop-off of PDF. There's still a lot of people running Adobe 8.1.4 or some horrifically outdated version, but by majority, the big focus now, if you look at like the black hole exploit pack, is Java. So just as a free little tip, if you haven't done it already, if you don't need Java, uninstall it. I don't use it at all. I just refuse to on principle. And if you are using Java, you do need to make sure you've got those patched and up-to-date versions, because this is the major entry point that's being used by these crime packs for the majority of malware distribution at the moment. A bit of focus there is going to make you guys a hell of a lot more secure. But here's an interesting question, and this becomes a challenge for the industry. Bad guys keep advancing and coming up with new techniques. They've got this huge infrastructure, these wonderful user interfaces, CRMs and technical support. I mean, they sound a bit like us, don't they? The question is, how far can we go in playing their own games back against them? And this introduces a wealth of really interesting legal, ethical, and moral questions. But, for example, a couple of versions ago, I found a small vulnerability in Black Hole Exploit Pack. Now imagine this. One of the biggest problems with cybercrime is we can't attribute the people. We can't put our finger on where they actually are and who they are. We can see their work. We can figure out what gang that might belong to, but actually identifying them is pretty hard. So this little vulnerability allowed for cross-site scripting. How legitimate would it be to use cross-site scripting on the administration interface of the tool and drop a little web bug back onto the cyber criminal's web server, so when they log in, we exploit them? For extra irony, we could use their own exploit pack. They'd probably be patched. But so we need to use something a little more creative than that to get a console and figure out where these guys are. Now, there's a whole sliding scale of specifics that make this quite acceptable to very unacceptable. For example, what if I use cross-site scripting to insert a reference to an image where I can track their true IP address? Maybe they're using Tor proxy or some masquerading service, but maybe when they access the admin panel in that way, my request might not go through it. I might get their actual IP. That's something you could probably defend in certain scenarios. You could move up to some JavaScript that runs in the browser and collects some more attributes, starting to mine some information. I mean, that's just a JavaScript. It's violating privacy, but it's not, hard, malicious code. And then you get up to, okay, let's actually exploit these guys and start to get direct access to the system. So it's interesting that the vulnerabilities they're using, they too are also vulnerable to. But how do we, on an international basis, when law is so national, decide what we should and shouldn't do? And at the moment, of course, the industry sticks to the whiter than white and just tries to deal with the outcome. So something for you to think about, because of course, the cyber criminals are experts at dealing with everything we throw at them. Everything has that equal and opposite reaction. Take, for example, the newest version of Black Hole, where you can see the nice advert. There's a billing model up there if you're trying to set up your own Black Hole server. And I'm a big fan of this lovely note. We're pleased to welcome you to a brand new version of the bundle of exploits. For more than 2 years of existence of our project, the old engine arrival and ligaments are badly worn. AV companies have become very quick to recognize this kind of criteria, Black Hole, and flag it as malware. And they've got a nice new set of features, including protecting their malicious code and removing some of the predictable URL structures. So they're constantly updating and innovating. All right, let's talk about another interesting class of malicious code. This stuff is really nasty. Is anyone bored yet? Okay, cool, just checking, because I could do like a different presentation about something random if anyone gets bored. I have lots of random stuff I want to talk about. Okay, so let's talk about ransomware. This has been around for a while, but it's been relatively low volume. And at the moment, we're really starting to see the numbers crank up. But what's scary is the technical implementation of this stuff is improving radically. What's interesting is these cyber criminals, who in some cases aren't very competent, seem to be getting access to very high quality implementations of malicious code. So for those of you that haven't come across it, and hopefully that's most of you, ransomware is this idea that malware gets on your computer and it encrypts your files and demands money to give you the password to decrypt them. So it's kind of holding your data to ransom on your own computer. And as we say, where I live near Oxford, that's just not cricket. It's pretty rude stuff. So here's one example of ransomware, which I think is, I'm going to say particularly brilliant, but actually I mean kind of particularly sinister and evil. This is clever in a horrible way. They've encrypted the files, but instead of just demanding money, they say, because your computer has been hacked and someone's spamming from your computer, you must pay a penalty within 96 hours. Otherwise, we will send a report to the police with special password to decrypt some files which contain spam software and child pornography files. Whoa. They're trying to frame us as a pedophile if we don't pay them money to get access to our data again. Next level of social engineering, because you might decide, I can restore to a backup, I don't care about this data. But you may not know enough as an individual to know that this threat is something the police will be able to differentiate from, even if it actually sends it. And so far, I've been trying really hard to make it send a notice to the police, but it hasn't worked. It's a bit of a strange habit, I know, but what can you do? It's better than collecting lots of weird spam messages. I do need to get outside more. So let's look at some other interesting examples of ransomware. This one issues an on-the-spot fine. So it says that, unfortunately, we violated some security policy. This is localized, so I ran it in Sweden, where I was earlier in the week, and it comes up with the Swedish police, and it changes to euros, which is weird because they're on the krona, but otherwise it's largely accurate. But for me, I get the Metropolitan Police, and it comes up with this information, and it says, yes, you need to be fined on the spot for using this particular service, which is an interesting concept. So you kind of panic and go, oh, I can't use my computer, I've done something illegal, I've been downloading software. And you're forced to pay this information as well. So let me show you an example of some ransomware in operation. Okay, so I'm going to open up my email client, and there's a nice email there, which we're going to open in a second. Before we do anything else, let's create a nice little document. Hello, okay, and we'll open this up, and we'll say, Sophos is awesome. Definition of subtle advertising. Okay, so we'll close this down. This could be kind of corporate accounts or, pictures of firstborn child or all manner of sensitive data. Now, some of these attacks just happen randomly when you're browsing the internet. They'll use something like, that Java 0-day or the Microsoft Internet Explorer 0-day. Others use social engineering. And social engineering is perhaps one of the more scary ones because you can't really use technical controls to effectively deal with it. You've got to have a good awareness and education policy. So I injected this from my server, but it's copied from an attack that I saw in the wild. Now, the basic premise is, we're the IT security team, we need you to do something. It's great social engineering because we spend all our time telling people to listen to us. So when we send out an easy-to-follow action, oddly and insultingly, they seem to click on the bad guys version more than most of ours. So maybe we could learn a few tips from them on how to effectively communicate, I don't know. The domain name is absolutely hilarious. It's microshaft.com. I've been following that one for a while. I really want to buy that domain name. Can you imagine what you could do with it? So I'm going to open this up, and we get the standard warning when it downloads. There we go, MEMS 1207B, and we get this. Now, who here would just click on run? You bunch of liars. I know you would, because we all just do this, don't we? We hit run. This comes up all the time, and it's annoying. If you're trying to do something, and if the premise is my data could go missing, and IT have told me to do something, you just click run. I know this for a matter of fact because I was once given permission to change the text of an SSL certificate warning. So you know when you go to a website with a bad certificate, it comes up and says, this site has a bad certificate. You shouldn't go here. Would you like to confirm the security exception? You know that? Comes up from time to time. I changed that to say, if you click continue, 1,000 kittens will die. No one noticed. Seriously. It's what we do today. So I'm going to click run like this, and we'll minimize everything down. And after a short space of time, we get something we'll be very, very familiar with. One of those annoying pop-ups you can't close. You seen those? Yeah? You're all very quiet. You okay? Cloud? Okay, so at least the front half of the audience. There's definitely a few nappers in the back. Okay. All right, so you've seen this. Here we go. So we'll apply the standard user fix of just, if we take this and we just put it over here, then everything is fine, okay? It's, you know you've done it. Haven't it? Windows update. Java update, boring. Okay, so everything seems fine. We just ignore this warning. Hopefully it goes away when we restart. If we open up our document from before, we can see our hello.rtf._crypt is now encrypted. By the way, encryption is 4, obfuscation is 3. It's a very important distinction. You should write that down so when you go back and explain it to friends and family. Now, let's go look at this warning. Your files are encrypted with RSA 1024 algorithm. To recover your files, you need to buy our decryptor. Contact us here. As I said before, that's just not cricket. These earlier pieces of ransomware used symmetric encryption, and with a bit of tinkering and pokering, you could get the password out and strip it off. We're now seeing versions of this that use public key encryption properly. So if you get encrypted, game over. There is no cleanup that can be done. You have one of two choices. You either try and pay the cyber criminals. Most of them will just take your money and laugh. Some of them have gone out of business. You can't get hold of these guys anymore. Some of them are weirdly honest for cyber criminals, and they will send you the password, which just kind of surprises me. But you might want to cancel your credit card really quickly. Or you restore to a backup. Who here has a backup that they absolutely trust? That is a higher percentage than many years ago, and fantastic. I do to within about a week. A week could be painful, but that's not too bad, and I do test it. But there's a lot of you here who don't. And that's very, very normal. And usually you find out your backups don't work when something like this happens. Short note, if your backup is in Dropbox, this encrypts files in Dropbox too, and it will overwrite your backup. So make sure it's a separable backup and don't plug it into a machine with ransomware on. That's usually a bad idea. This also kills the age-old adage that you need to be an administrator to get impacted by malware. This will run happily as a user, And if you happen to be the CEO connected to the network share where all of your company's data is, things get really, really painful. So watch out for this stuff. Our assumption with most security problems is they can happen and we can clean them up and pay to remediate afterwards. Some of this stuff, once impacted, can be a true game over. Watch this area really closely. It's up and coming, and there's a lot more malware doing this, which is really, really nasty. Okay, so a few more little things that I want to talk about. How am I doing on time? Oh, fantastic. I've got like 10 minutes, right? Ish. 15? 10? Oh, I was going to try and squeeze some extra time there. If anyone's still interested at the end of the 10 minutes, you could try booing when they make me leave the stage and see if I get an encore. It's never happened at a security conference before, literally. All right, so I want to talk about a couple of other things, and then I'll start to wrap up. Password hashes, great fun theme of the day. Most of you will be familiar with how these keep going missing. This is a nice extract that was put together by a chap on the internet of some of the LinkedIn password hashes. And you can see, it's quite astonishing when you go online and look, the pace at which these hashes now fall to crackers. 60% of the over 6 million hashes had been broken within a couple of days of the release. I'm a big particular fan of password 1, as I mentioned earlier. Yes, multiple users had password 1. It would be irresponsible to point out all the funny, rude ones on the slide, so I won't do that. But interestingly, people do still choose really, really bad passwords. If you run a web service, if you hold password hashes, please go back and check that you do things to make sure you're not vulnerable to SQL injection, you're using a web application firewall, but most importantly, investigate this concept of salting, sprinkling a bit of salt into your hash. It drastically increases the computation time for cybercriminals. It's a few lines of code. It doesn't really cost you anything. It's trivial to do. And you can avoid, to a large degree, much of the pain that these organizations do. All right, so I want to show you a couple more fun little things with that whinge over. A quick thing on mobile devices. I can't cover all of mobile hacking in this presentation because it's kind of short, but if you do want to see things like me jailbreaking an iPad over the wire and stealing pictures up people's nostrils whilst they're using it, you can go online and watch the video. It's quite entertaining. But I do want to kind of show you an interesting behavior of mobile devices you may not be familiar with. And this actually relates to wireless. So we ran a little project recently, which you can see here, where we basically got a bike, fitted it with some dynamos and some solar panels, wired it into a little Raspberry Pi computer and a Wi-Fi adapter, and then cycled around London for 2.5 days building a map of wireless networks that were and were not secure. I'm astonished that we managed to convince the marketing department that this was a good use of time. But it's pretty interesting when you look at the breakdown of results on how people are still doing a really bad job with things like wireless security. What's amazing is you'll often see headquarters is really, really secure, but then they'll have little branch offices with the same names using outdated security standards which can be cracked in minutes. So check that out, have a look at the video results and also some of the top tips and best practices. But I want to show you something you may not know about wireless, because you all know wireless networks can be attacked, right? You may not know the details, but you know that it can happen. What you might not know is how much information you're giving away even when you're not using the Wi-Fi. Who in here is using the wireless right now? A few of you, yes? How many of you are not using the wireless in here right now? Quite a few of you. Is that because I'm here? There was a yes at the back there. Thank you, sir. It's high praise. I'll get a tinfoil hat for you later. Now, if your phone is configured to use Wi-Fi but not connected to a wireless network, it's still sending out astonishingly large amounts of information. I have here a little wireless scanner, $36 on eBay. And over here, I'm running a wireless scan. Now, I'm running this in what I like to call not Google mode. I am not collecting data. This is just collecting the little probes. So I'm going to switch over to my file here, where I've got a list of the detected networks. Now, you know that you can pick up wireless networks. What you might not know is that you can actually pick up the phones as well. So here you can see, this is a list of mobile devices in the area at the moment. So there we go, you can see the Grand Hotel Mallow, Aircom. That might be someone's home network. Don't worry if you're on this list, by the way. Don't kind of panic and freak out. UPC 963595, Telecom, lots of them. If you go through the list long enough, it's usually a matter of time until you find something incredibly rude. I think the worst I found yet was Council House Gritter. Do not Google that. I didn't understand it, and Googled it and got a very nasty surprise. My Wi-Fi is, I love the way there's a delayed reaction as people think about it and go, yeah, that is rude. Mine's called Pretty Fly for a Wi-Fi. So here you can see, Linksys, Amethyst, Hotspot, Blanche Flower, Louise Fitzgerald Hotel. Lots of these names are wireless networks you have previously connected to. Some of them identify a unique place you've been. Some of them identify a unique place that you might work, who your clients are. I know people who have their wireless network set to their home address, which is disconcerting if you're a journalist that's just returned from Libya, for example, and you've been beaming this information out. But what's really scary is if I create a wireless network, for example, our friend here with Amethyst Wi-Fi Group, he's probably turning his phone off right now. His phone will automatically connect to my wireless network like that and start to get to the internet without any user interaction. So I get the ability to attack it directly. Now, that may not seem that scary, but let me show you a couple of things very quickly that are possible. I'm doing okay, aren't I? No panic yet. All right, so what I'm going to do is just bring up a copy of my Linux attacking system, and we're going to use a readily available tool called SET, the Social Engineering Toolkit. Now, we're going to choose to launch a social engineering attack, and we're going to do a website attack today. Notice the SMS spoofing and all the other mass mailing and phishing in here makes it nice and easy. A website attack, we'll do a credential harvester attack, and we're going to do it against Google. Here we go. So we'll choose Gmail. I can't choose Facebook because usually people point out I look like Mark Zuckerberg at that point, which just upsets me greatly. OK, here we go. We'll open up my Windows 7 system. We'll apply our standard user fix to our warning over here. Get rid of this. And open up Internet Explorer. And what happens is on my dodgy Wi-Fi, it attempts to redirect me off to the other page. This, incidentally, could break horribly if my wireless connection has died, which it hasn't. Phew. I know you're not the default most annoying warning in the history of the universe. OK, so I'm going to try and log in with a nice secure password, OK, and hit no. At which point, it kind of does a bit of redirection, and then I end up back at Gmail, which is a bit weird. What's happened is because you've connected to my dodgy wireless network, the hacker provided a fake version of Gmail even before you got to negotiating the SSL certificate, redirected it to here, and stole the username James Lyne and password 2012. So astonishingly, lots of these mobile devices are open to kind of 1990s style attacks that we already solved to a large degree with the PC, with things like enterprise configuration and management. OK, I'm going to end with one last attack, and then I promise I will shut up, OK? This is kind of interesting. I was playing with one of these recently. This is really cool. It's a power plug with a penetration testing operating system running on it. So you can walk in, plug it into the wall, and you can connect in over 3G or something like that, and then start attacking remotely. And what I noticed is it has full IPv6 support. Does anyone here use IPv6? No. Oh, yes, really? That's amazing. I'm going to come and hug you after the presentation. Just be warned. Run fast if you're unprepared for this. Now, most of you probably aren't using IPv6, but interestingly, it's in most of your networks. It's on by default on Windows 7. Mac OS X, you can't even turn it off. So, I recently configured a Linux system and found even my Linux Minimal has IPv6 by default. So I started playing with some of these attack tools, and I want to show you a vulnerability that's kind of in the design that is present even still in Windows 7 and Windows 8. So I'm going to minimize all of this, bring up the task manager just to show you performance, and bring up CMD. Here we go. You can see I've got a nice IPv6 address there. OK. If we go back to my hacking system, there is going to be a little command here called flood_router6 eth1. Does anyone remember the ICMP ping of death? Is anyone that old? I love the way you started nodding before I said that. OK, so protocol level vulnerability, you send some packets through and the computer just went, ah, and died. Now, we kind of learned that lesson. We learned to mitigate it and deal with the issues. Now, with IPv6, this stuff is active again. So I'm going to run this command only for a couple of seconds, because otherwise everything crashes. Right? Oh, that was quite a lot. If we switch over to my Windows 7 fully patched system, note what's happening to my physical memory, note my CPU usage. Just a few packets, and it's kind of gone, "Argh!" and started panicking. Okay? So the computer's now relatively unusable. If I run this for a few more seconds, it just completely dies. If we run ipconfig, which we can only do because I've done such a small amount of that attack, you'll see that it's essentially taking advantage of router solicitation, and we get this massive long list of IPv6 addresses. This is a default Windows 7 instance, fully patched and up to date, much like you will have in most of your environments. I've done nothing extra to enable this, and this attack works. It can also be used to redirect traffic and get access to information for man in the middle. So even if you don't think you're using IPv6, it is something you need to think about. So I need to wrap up, even though I've got loads more stuff I'd like to play with. But if you find me in the bar later, I'll show you more cool things, including an excellent Android demo that's quite good fun. We get to make it talk. But basically, my advice to you is this. Keep an eye on all this technology. It's changing very, very quickly. Think about how our adversaries are diversifying. Look at these tools and remember how easy it is for people to get their hands on high-quality attack toolkits, and the fact that they don't need to be an expert to launch these kinds of attacks. They just need to be someone with intent. I can't solve all of security and give you all your top 10 practices in one presentation. Please do check out the Sophos website for some free toolkits that cover this. But broadly, what I advocate is defense in depth, building up those layers to make it harder for the bad guys to get through. It's all about doing the basics. Most of this stuff can be avoided with simple configuration and security best practices, and you might want to take a dive through the wonders of IPv6 to at least turn it off so you're not vulnerable. So this slide is intentionally left blank except for the microdot, and you can find me on Twitter there or email there if you'd like to rant at me or ask a question. I hope this has been useful and entertaining. Have an excellent day. Thank you.